Across Earth, every screen, civilian billboards, military command tables, deep space observatories, even personal implants, went dark at the exact same second. Planes froze mid-air as pilots stared at dead displays. Space stations halted their rotations as alarms cut off without explanation. For one impossible heartbeat, the entire planet stopped breathing. Then a symbol appeared. It was vast and alien, etched in burning blue light. Its geometry hurt to look at, as if the human brain rejected its logic. Ancient lines twisted into a crest that radiated authority older than human history itself. Those who knew felt fear immediately. Those who didn't felt it anyway. This was the Galactic Council. For centuries, humanity had whispered about them. Astronomers had found star systems stripped bare, planets cracked like broken eggs, civilizations erased so completely that only radioactive dust remained. Every trail led to the same conclusion. There was something out there that enforced order across the galaxy, and it did not negotiate as equals. Now, it had finally noticed Earth. The message did not come with greetings. No ceremony, no curiosity. It was not a conversation. It was a command. A cold, synthesized voice echoed through every language at once, translated perfectly into every human mind. Emerging civilization designated, humanity of soul. Your expansion has been observed. Your survival is conditional. In underground bunkers, generals tightened their fists. In orbit, admirals leaned closer to their consoles. In cities, millions of people stared at the sky, sensing that something vast had just turned its gaze upon them. The voice continued, emotionless and absolute. By authority of the Galactic Council, you are hereby ordered to submit tribute. Resources, labor, military compliance. Refusal will be interpreted as hostility. Silence followed, not the peaceful kind, the kind that presses on the chest. The Council's history was well known to those who studied deep space. When they demanded tribute, entire species complied without question. Worlds surrendered their strongest soldiers to fight wars that were not their own. Planets stripped their oceans, their metals, their children, anything the Council required. And those who resisted? There were no survivors to tell the story. In the war room beneath Geneva, holographic projections flickered to life. Earth's leaders, presidents, prime ministers, scientists, admirals, appeared one by one. Some were pale, some were furious. All of them understood the stakes. This is it, one general whispered. First contact, and it's an ultimatum. A scientist spoke, voice trembling. Their energy's signature. It's beyond anything we've detected. Their fleets could be anywhere. Watching us right now, on a separate channel, a deep space telescope captured something terrifying. Far beyond Pluto's orbit, space itself rippled, as if reality was being peeled back. Something massive was waiting. The Council wasn't alone. The voice returned, colder than before. You will comply within one standard cycle. Failure will result in corrective action. Your species will be reduced to a cautionary record. The symbol vanished. The screens returned to normal. And Earth erupted. News networks screamed the same headline across every language. We are not alone. Crowds flooded the streets, some praying, some shouting, some demanding surrender. Markets crashed. Borders locked down. Militaries worldwide went to full alert for the first time in human history. Fear spread faster than any virus. But something else spread too. Anger. In a secure chamber deep beneath the Atlantic, the Supreme Defense Council convened. No cameras, no speeches, just humanity's decision-makers staring at one another, knowing this moment would define their species forever. They see us as livestock, an admiral said quietly. A resource to be harvested. They always do, replied another. That's how empires work. A civilian leader leaned forward. Let's be realistic. We can't win a war against a galactic empire. Compliance might be our only chance to survive. The room went still. Then a voice spoke from the shadows, calm, controlled, unmistakably human. Survival isn't living, said Fleet Commander Elias Ward. All eyes turned to him. Ward wasn't the loudest in the room. He never was. He was a veteran of humanity's first interstellar conflicts, pirate wars, border skirmishes, disasters that never made the news. He stood slowly. For all of history, he continued, humanity has been tested by forces bigger than us. Empires, armies, gods, according to some. His eyes hardened. Every time, they made the same mistake. Someone asked quietly, what mistake? They assumed we would kneel. Ward gestured, and a projection filled the room. Not alien fleets, not council symbols, human ships, experimental warships hidden in classified shipyards. Darkhold vessels designed not for defense, but for annihilation. Weapons that bent physics, drives that tore through space like a blade. We didn't explore the stars to beg for permission, Ward said. We didn't survive extinction events, world wars, and the death of our own planet just to become someone else's tribute. A general slammed his fist on the table. Do you know what refusing means? Extinction. Ward nodded once. Yes, and so do they. The room buzzed with tension. A scientist spoke hesitantly. Commander, the Council has wiped out species thousands of years older than us. Ward met her gaze. Then they've grown comfortable, predictable. He leaned forward, voice lowering. And predators who get comfortable forget how dangerous prey can be when it learns to fight back. Above Earth, satellites detected movement. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. Council scouts. The countdown had begun. In cities, families gathered in silence. Soldiers hugged their children before deployment. Engineers worked without sleep, pushing reactors beyond safety limits. Shipyards ignited with activity as vessels long hidden from public knowledge powered up for the first time. Humanity did not broadcast its fear. It broadcast readiness. In the void beyond the solar system, the Galactic Council observed Earth calmly. To them, this was routine. Another young species about to be folded into their endless dominion. They had no idea what humans were loading into their launch bays. They had no idea what kind of war humanity was preparing. And most of all, they had no idea that the tribute they demanded was the one thing humanity would never give freely. Its freedom. The silence before the storm stretched across the stars. And when it finally broke, the galaxy would learn a truth it had forgotten long ago. Some species do not answer demands. They answer with war. The countdown did not tick on any human clock. It lived in everyone's chest. 24 standard hours. That was the Council's deadline. One full rotation of Earth to decide whether humanity would kneel or burn. Above the planet, the first undeniable proof arrived. A tear opened in space beyond the orbit of Neptune. Not an explosion, not a flash. Space itself folded inward, like reality taking a sharp breath. Then something massive emerged. Angular, metallic, impossibly precise. A scout vessel. Telescopes across the solar system locked onto it instantly. Analysts froze as data streamed in. The ship was longer than an aircraft carrier, wrapped in layered armor that absorbed radiation instead of reflecting it. Its engines didn't burn fuel. They distorted gravity. This isn't a fleet, a naval analyst whispered. It's a warning. The scout didn't attack. It didn't communicate. It simply watched. Humanity responded in kind. From dark-side shipyards on Luna, from asteroid belts disguised as mining operations, from stations officially listed as decommissioned, human warships began to move. No speeches, no announcements, just controlled, deliberate motion. In the command chamber beneath the Atlantic, Commander Ward stood before a wall of shifting star maps. Red markers pulsed softly. Council assets detected across deep space. They were already positioned. Already ready. They expected surrender, Ward said. That means their main fleets are elsewhere, enforcing tribute from other worlds. A younger officer frowned. So they underestimated us. Ward's expression didn't change. No, they categorized us. He expanded the projection. Entire sectors lit up, worlds bound by council law. Some were stripped. Some were fortified. All were silent. They believe fear is enough, Ward continued. It usually is. A transmission cut through the room. The council's symbol flared once more across every screen on Earth. The voice returned. Your response window is closing. Compliance will ensure your preservation. Resistance will ensure your removal. This time, humanity answered, not with words. Across the solar system, human fleets powered up simultaneously. Engines roared to life with control violence. Space-time bent as experimental drives engaged. Energy signatures spiked so sharply that Council sensors flickered in confusion. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council hesitated. "What is that?" one alien observer demanded aboard the scout vessel. The ship's AI struggled to interpret the readings. Unknown propulsion models. Weapon systems not matching known classifications. Humanity wasn't using Council technology. Humanity had built its own. On Earth, panic turned into something else as civilians watched military feeds leak online. Sleek black ships slid into formation above the atmosphere. Their hulls carried no insignias, no flags, just purpose. In the command chamber, a civilian leader swallowed hard. "Once we do this, there's no turning back." Ward nodded. "There never was." He raised his hand. "Broadcast on all frequencies," he said. The technicians hesitated only a second before complying. The signal punched through subspace, tearing past light years of distance, slamming directly into the Council's network. The galaxy listened. "This is humanity," Ward said, his voice steady, unshaken. "Your demand has been received." For a brief moment, the Council believed this was surrender. Then Ward finished. "We do not pay tribute." Silence. Then, the scout ship fired. A beam of concentrated energy ripped through space toward Earth's outer defense line. It was meant to be a demonstration, a reminder of power. It never reached its target. A human destroyer shifted position, unfolding armor plates that revealed something the Council had never cataloged. The incoming beam bent, curved away as if grabbed by invisible hands. Gravity weapons. The beam collapsed into itself and vanished. On the scout vessel, alarms screamed. "That's impossible," an alien commander hissed. "No species below Tier 7 can manipulate gravity fields at that scale." Humanity didn't wait. Ward's hand dropped. "Fire." The human fleet answered with precision fury. Not energy beams. Not kinetic slugs. Space cracked. A human warhead detonated near the scout vessel. Not with heat, but with absence. For a fraction of a second, reality around the ship ceased to exist. When space returned, the scout was gone. No debris. No signal. Just nothing. Erased. Across Council space, monitoring stations went dark one by one. For the first time in recorded galactic history, a Council asset had been destroyed by a species that hadn't even been classified as a threat. Shock rippled through the Galactic Council. Emergency sessions convened. Ancient beings argued in voices that hadn't been raised in millennia. This was not predicted. They should not have this capability. Mobilize the fleets. Orders flew across subspace. Massive armadas turned towards Sol. War engines awakened from centuries of dormancy. The Council had crushed rebellions before. This would be no different, or so they believed. On Earth, the reality of war settled in. Cities dimmed their lights. Children were moved underground. Soldiers boarded transports, knowing many would not return. But there was no despair. There was resolve. Humanity had been pushed to the edge before, by nature, by itself, by extinction-level threats. Every time it adapted, it survived. It fought harder. And now, for the first time, the enemy was not another nation. It was the galaxy. In the quiet before the next strike, Ward stared at the star map. Council fleets were coming from every direction. Numbers beyond counting. An officer asked softly, "Sir, can we really win this?" Ward didn't look away. "No," he said honestly. Then he allowed himself a thin smile. "But neither can they." Far beyond human space, the Galactic Council prepared to make an example of Earth. They still believed this war would be short. They still believed fear would break humanity. They were about to learn the most dangerous lesson in the universe. A species that answers ultimatums with defiance is not fighting to survive. It is fighting to end the threat forever. And the war had only just begun. The Council fleets arrived like a dark tide. From dozens of hyperspace fractures, warships poured into the outer solar system. Vast, gleaming structures layered with armor older than human civilization. Some were cities unto themselves, carrying millions of troops bred for obedience and conquest. Their formation was flawless, perfected across thousands of subjugated worlds. To the Galactic Council, this was overwhelming force. To humanity, it was confirmation. Long-range sensors screamed as enemy numbers climbed higher and higher. Even hardened officers felt the weight of it. No simulation had ever shown odds this brutal. Enemy count exceeds projections, an analyst reported. By a lot. Ward studied the display, calm as ever. Good, he said. That means they brought everything. The council broadcast again, their tone no longer cold, but furious. Humanity of soul, you have destroyed council property. You will submit immediately or face total eradication. Ward didn't respond. Instead, he gave a single order. Release the Vanguard. From the shadow of Jupiter, human ships emerged that the council had never detected. Smaller than battleships. Faster than anything on record. Their hulls shimmered, bending light and sensor data alike. Stealth cruisers. They didn't charge the enemy fleet. They slipped through it. Council commanders watched in confusion as their sensor grids filled with ghosts. Contacts appearing and vanishing. Signals contradicting one another, targeting solutions collapsing midlock. What is happening? One alien commander demanded. Why can't we see them? The answer came a heartbeat later. Council warships began to die. Not exploding. Not burning. Failing. Entire vessels went dark as power grids collapsed simultaneously. Engines stalled. Weapons fell silent. Life support flickered. Human cyber warfare teams tore through council systems that had never been challenged before, exploiting arrogance baked into ancient code. They're inside our networks, a council tactician shrieked. Shut down external connections. Too late. Humanity had learned something early in its history. The fastest way to win a war was to cripple the enemy before the first shot truly landed. Then the real battle began. Council dreadnoughts opened fire, saturating space with energy barges meant to cleanse entire regions. Human ships scattered, not in panic, but in controlled chaos. Gravity drives flared as vessels twisted through impossible angles, dodging attacks that should have been unavoidable. Human return fire came in waves. Rail cannons hurled tungsten slugs at relativistic speeds, punching clean through council armor designed to resist plasma and energy. Missiles bloomed into clouds of autonomous kill drones that adapted mid-flight, swarming weak points faster than council point defenses could track. Space became a graveyard. Wreckage spun silently, illuminated by distant stars. Debris fields grew so dense that navigation became lethal. On the council flagship, ancient beings watched in disbelief. They're not fighting like a young species, one said. They're fighting like survivors. Humanity pressed the advantage ruthlessly. Boarding pods slammed into disabled council ships. Inside, human soldiers moved with terrifying efficiency. No hesitation, no mercy. They didn't fight for conquest or glory. They fought to make sure the enemy never rose again. Reports flooded in from across the solar system. Council troop transports captured. Supply lines severed. Entire battle groups isolated and destroyed. But the Council adapted. They always did. Massive carriers deployed bioengineered warforms. Creatures grown for combat in vacuum and zero gravity. They swarmed human lines, tearing into hulls, ripping through compartments. Human casualties spiked. Med bays overflowed. Commanders watched red markers vanish from their displays. Ships lost. Crews gone. An officer's voice cracked over comms. We're taking heavy losses on the left flank. Ward clenched his jaw. Hold the line, he said. Phase 2. Deep beneath Mars, something ancient and terrible awakened. Humanity's last resort. The planet's surface split open as colossal structures rose from hidden caverns. Planetary defense cannons built into the crust itself. Their barrels aligned with cold precision, drawing power from fusion cores buried miles deep. When they fired, the solar system shook. Beams lanced across millions of kilometers, slicing through council carriers like paper. One by one, the largest enemy vessels died in brilliant silence. Council morale cracked. "This is no longer suppression," an alien commander whispered. "This is slaughter." For the first time in millennia, a council fleet began to retreat. Ward watched the enemy pull back, regrouping beyond effective range. He knew what came next. Desperation. And desperation made empires dangerous. A new council signal burst across all frequencies, this one raw with fury. "You force our hand, humanity. We will burn your world to ash." Sensors spiked. A superweapon powered up at the heart of the council formation, an ancient device capable of sterilizing planets. It had ended civilizations older than Earth. On Earth, skies glowed faintly as energy built far away. People looked up, holding loved ones, knowing this might be the end. In the command chamber, silence returned. An officer whispered, "If that fires, we're finished." Ward closed his eyes for a brief moment. Then he spoke, launched the final response. Far beyond the battlefield, drifting unnoticed among debris, a single human vessel activated. It was small, unarmed by conventional standards. It carried no weapons. It carried a drive. A prototype humanity had never tested in combat, one that didn't travel through space. It rewrote it. The ship vanished and reappeared inside the Council superweapon. For a fraction of a second, Council engineers stared at the impossible. Then space folded inward. The superweapon collapsed into itself, crushed by forces it could not comprehend. The implosion tore through nearby ships, ripping the heart out of the Council formation. The shock wave echoed across the stars. When the light faded, the Council fleet was broken. What remained turned and fled. Across the galaxy, civilizations watching in secret saw the impossible happen. The Galactic Council, masters of fear, had been beaten back by a species that refused to kneel. In the aftermath, wreckage drifted quietly. Fires burned out. Survivors were rescued or captured. Humanity stood bloodied, exhausted, but unbroken. Ward looked at the star map one last time. "This isn't over," he said softly, "but they'll never demand tribute from us again." And somewhere deep in Council space, ancient rulers stared at the ruins of their fleet and finally understood the truth they had ignored. Humanity did not answer demands. Humanity answered with war. The battlefield fell quiet, but the war did not end. Across the solar system, emergency signals echoed from crippled Council ships drifting without power. Some surrendered immediately. Others self-destructed rather than be captured, taking their secrets and their crews with them. Human rescue craft moved anyway. Not out of mercy, out of intelligence. Human boarding teams secured wrecks, extracting data cores, star charts, command hierarchies. Every scrap of information was logged, analyzed, and fed into growing models of Council territory. For the first time, humanity could see the Empire clearly. And it was vast. In the command chamber, exhaustion finally showed on every face. Officers slumped in their chairs. Medics moved quietly, treating wounds without ceremony. Victory had been earned, but at a cost that would be felt for generations. An intelligence officer broke the silence. "Sir, long-range intercepts coming in. Multiple Council worlds are broadcasting." Ward looked up. "Broadcasting what?" "Appeals," the officer said. "And warnings." The first transmission filled the room. A reptilian figure appeared, its scales dulled, eyes rimmed with fear. "We are a tributary world," the alien said quickly. "The Council forced our compliance centuries ago. We watched your battle. You did what no one else ever could." Another signal cut in, then another. Different species, different systems. Same message. "They're asking for protection," someone whispered. Ward felt the weight of it immediately. Humanity had not just fought a war. It had shattered a myth. For thousands of years, the Council had ruled not only through fleets, but through belief. The belief that resistance was impossible. That submission was survival. That belief was gone. Across the galaxy, Oppressed worlds were watching, listening, and daring to hope. A civilian leader frowned. If we answer them, we're not just defending Earth anymore. We're taking responsibility for something much bigger. Ward nodded. I know. Another officer spoke carefully. Sir, if we help them, the Council will come back stronger. This time with everything they have. Ward didn't hesitate. They were always going to. He turned back to the star map. Red zones, Council-controlled space, outnumbered everything else combined. Humanity was a spark in a sea of darkness. But sparks start fires. Prepare a response, Ward said, to all incoming transmissions. What do we say? The officer asked. Ward paused for a moment. Then he said, tell them this. Humanity does not rule. We do not demand tribute. We do not enslave. The room held its breath. But, Ward continued, voice hardening, we will fight. The message was sent. Across the galaxy, worlds heard it. Some cried in relief. Some didn't believe it. Some prepared for retaliation. And some, quietly, began to rebel. Deep within Council territory, alarms sounded in chambers that had never known fear. Ancient rulers argued, their confidence shattered, their authority bleeding away. This must be contained, one demanded. Crush them. All of them. Another spoke, voice shaking. If we fail, the entire system of tribute collapses. And that was the truth they could not escape. The Council had built an empire that required obedience. Humanity had introduced a new variable. Choice. Back on Earth, the skies were quiet again. Cities emerged from blackout. Families reunited. Memorials were already being planned. The cost of defiance was heavy, but the cost of surrender would have been everything. Ward stood alone for a moment, staring out at the stars. He knew the future would not be peaceful. There would be more battles, more losses, more hard decisions. But humanity had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. They were no longer a minor species on the edge of the galaxy. They were a threat. And to every empire built on fear, that was the most dangerous thing of all. Somewhere far away, a council strategist whispered words that spread through their ranks like poison. Humanity must be erased before others learn to say no. But it was already too late. The galaxy had seen what happened when tribute was demanded from Earth, and it would never forget the answer. The retaliation came sooner than anyone hoped. Council space erupted in emotion as ancient armadas, fleets that had not flown in living memory, were dragged from deep vaults and forgotten shipyards. These were not the patrol forces humanity had faced. These were extinction fleets, designed for one purpose only, to erase defiance so completely that it never inspired imitation. Human sensors detected them one by one, then by the hundreds, then by the thousands. In the command chamber, the star map bled red. They're not converging on Earth, an analyst reported. They're splitting. Multiple targets. Ward understood immediately. They're going after the ones who reached out to us. The Council wasn't trying to win a battle. They were trying to send a message. Humanity answered without hesitation. Strike groups launched at maximum burn, pushing engines past safe limits. Human fleets didn't move as a single armada. They fractured into hunting packs, each tailored for speed, disruption, and precision strikes. They couldn't be everywhere, but they could be anywhere that mattered. The first massacre was intercepted near a yellow dwarf system on the edge of Council space. A tributary world, barely industrialized, was moments from orbital bombardment when human ships dropped out of folded space like falling knives. No warnings, no demands. Human weapons tore into Council destroyers before they could reorient. Gravity snares locked enemy ships in place while rail fire gutted their cores. The Council fleet tried to pull back, but human cruisers burned through them, pushing the fight close, dangerously close. On the surface below, alien civilians watched the sky turn into a storm of fire and shadow. For the first time in their history, someone had come for them. Word spread faster than any transmission. Worlds that had hidden for centuries now whispered humanity's name with something like reverence. Resistance cells rose up, striking Council infrastructure as human fleets passed through. The galaxy was no longer quiet. It was burning. But the Council learned too. They adapted their tactics, baiting human forces into traps, sacrificing entire fleets to pin them down while heavier assets closed in. Losses mounted. Human ships vanished from sensors and never returned. Memorial lists grew longer by the hour. In one brutal engagement near a collapsed star, a human carrier group was surrounded. Outnumbered 10-1, outgunned, escape routes cut off. Command requested orders. Ward stared at the live feed. Ships scarred, power failing, crews exhausted. "Hold," he said softly. "As long as you can." The carrier group didn't break. They fought until their ammunition ran dry. Then they rammed. One by one, human ships slammed into Council vessels, detonating reactors at point-blank range, turning the battlefield into a blinding inferno. They didn't survive, but neither did the Council fleet sent to destroy them. The footage spread across the galaxy within hours. Humanity was not invincible, but it was relentless. Deep within Council territory, panic began to replace discipline. Tributary worlds revolted openly now, seizing Council garrisons, sabotaging shipyards, cutting supply routes. The Empire's greatest strength, its reach, became its weakness. Too many fires. Not enough hands to extinguish them. An emergency Council transmission cut through subspace, broadcast everywhere, and censored. "Cease hostilities. Humanity of soul. Negotiations are now possible." The word hung in the air like a confession. In the command chamber, no one spoke for a long moment. Then Ward laughed, quietly, without humor. "They don't want peace," he said. "They want time." A civilian leader asked, "Do we give it to them?" Ward shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "We end this the only way they understand." Orders went out across human-controlled space and beyond. Not for conquest, not for occupation, for decapitation. Human strike teams bypassed fleets and borders, diving deep into Council space using routes stolen from captured data cores. Targets were precise. Command nexuses, tribute archives, central control AIs, the mechanisms that made the Empire function. One by one, they fell. Council worlds woke to find their overseers gone. Tribute demands ceased. Fleets received no orders. The machine stalled. And when the heart finally stopped, it was almost quiet. The Galactic Council did not surrender. It simply ended. What remained was chaos, fear, and a galaxy unsure what came next. Humanity stood amid the wreckage, bloodied and scarred, knowing the hardest part was still ahead. Winning the war had been terrible. Living with the consequences would be harder. But one truth echoed across every star system, spoken in dozens of languages, carved into history by fire and defiance. When the Galactic Council demanded tribute, humanity answered with war, and the galaxy was forever changed. The war did not end with cheers or celebration. It ended with exhaustion. Across human space and far beyond it, fleets limped home, trailing damage and ghosts. Ships that had survived battles now carried silence where voices once filled corridors. Med bays overflowed. Repair docks burned day and night. Entire crews returned older than when they had left, changed in ways no armor could protect. Humanity had broken the Galactic Council's grip, but breaking an empire did not mean peace followed automatically. In a vacuum left behind, chaos bloomed. Council-controlled sectors fractured almost overnight. Without central command, former enforcers turned on one another. Local warlords seized fleets. Old rivalries resurfaced with blood-soaked enthusiasm. Planets that had been protected by the Council suddenly found themselves alone, surrounded by enemies they had been forbidden to fight for centuries. Distress calls flooded human channels. Too many. Too fast. In a command chamber, the star map was no longer red with enemy fleets. It was a mosaic of instability. Civil wars. Refugee convoys. Star systems collapsing under their own weight. An intelligence officer spoke quietly. "We broke the chain, but the pieces are cutting everything around them." Ward rubbed his eyes. He hadn't slept properly in days. "That was always going to happen," he said. "Empires don't fall cleanly." A civilian leader asked the question no one wanted to voice. "Is this our responsibility now?" The room went still. Humanity had never asked to rule the galaxy. They had fought to survive, to be left alone, to refuse tribute and extinction. But now millions, maybe billions of lives hung in the balance. Ward exhaled slowly. "We didn't choose this role," he said, "but we can choose how we handle it." Orders went out, not for invasion, not for domination, but for stabilization. Human fleets were reorganized into task forces designed to escort refugees, break blockades, and deter opportunistic violence. Soldiers trained for total war found themselves guarding evacuation corridors and distributing food grown in orbital farms. It was harder than battle. Some worlds welcomed them as saviors. Others feared them as the next empire. More than once, human ships were fired upon by the very people they had come to help. More than once, commanders had to decide whether restraint was worth the cost in lives. Humanity learned quickly that power without restraint created monsters. They had just finished killing one. In former Council territory, something unexpected began to happen. Species that had never been allowed representation began to talk to each other. Councils formed that were nothing like the old one. Messy, loud, inefficient, but free. Borders were renegotiated. Old tribute routes became trade lanes. Not all of it worked. Some of it failed spectacularly, but it was theirs. The Galactic Council had ruled through fear and inevitability. Humanity's presence introduced uncertainty, and with it, possibility. Still, not everyone accepted the new reality. In the depths of space, remnants of the Council regrouped. Fanatics who believed order could only exist under absolute rule. Admirals who refused to accept that a young species had shattered a system older than their stars. They struck without warning. Human convoys were ambushed. Refugee fleets were massacred and blamed on humanity to spark resentment. False transmissions spread, lies across unstable regions. The war changed shape. It became quieter, more dangerous. In one such ambush near a binary system, a human peacekeeping group was wiped out almost entirely. Survivors transmitted footage before their destruction. Council insignia carved into hulls, ritualistic, defiant. The message was clear. This wasn't over. In the command chamber, Ward watched the footage in silence. When it ended, he straightened. "They want to drag us back into total war," he said, "because that's the only battlefield they understand." An officer asked, "Do we give it to them?" Ward shook his head. "No, we give them something worse." He authorized Operation Embervale. Not a fleet movement, a revelation. Human intelligence released archives recovered from Council cores, and censored records of tribute worlds stripped bare, species sterilized for inefficiency, rebellions erased and rewritten as natural disasters. Proof, undeniable and brutal. The galaxy watched. Worlds that had hesitated now turned openly against remaining Council loyalists. Their support networks collapsed as allies vanished overnight. Smugglers refused them passage. Shipyards sabotaged their hulls. The Council remnants had ruled through secrets as much as force. Now, they had none. One by one, their strongholds fell, not to human fleets, but to the very worlds they once dominated. Humanity intervened only when collapse threatened to become genocide. The line was thin and crossed often. Back on Earth, the cost of leadership became clear. Economies strained under the weight of extended operations. Political divisions flared. Protests filled streets, not against war, but against endless responsibility. "We didn't fight to become galactic police," people shouted. They were right. In a rare public address, Ward spoke directly to Earth and beyond. "We are not here to rule," he said. "We are here because if we leave now, the vacuum we created will kill more than the Council ever did." His voice hardened. "We will leave, but not yet." The honesty resonated. Slowly, painfully, structures began to form that did not depend on humanity's constant presence. Shared defense pacts, mutual aid networks, independent councils with rotating leadership and open records. Imperfect, but alive. Years passed. The galaxy did not become peaceful, but it became fairer. Human fleets reduced their patrols. Bases were dismantled. Soldiers came home, some to parades, others to silence, all carrying memories that would never fully fade. On the edge of former council space, a monument was erected by dozens of species together. It bore no flags, no names, just words translated into every known language. Here ended the age of tribute. Ward visited once. He stood quietly, older now, watching alien children play beneath stars that no longer belonged to an empire. An aide asked him if it had been worth it. Ward didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, "History won't remember the battles. It'll remember the choice." "What choice?" the aide asked. Ward looked out at the open sky. That when the galaxy demanded obedience, he said, "We said no." And in doing so, humanity learned the hardest lesson of all. Winning a war is easier than earning a future. But for the first time since the stars had known fear, that future was finally possible. The galaxy did not heal quickly. Freedom, humanity learned, was louder than war and far more complicated. Years after the fall of the Galactic Council, the old borders were gone, but the scars remained. Trade lanes once enforced by fear were now open, yet pirates prowled them. Worlds that had relied on council protection struggled to defend themselves. Ancient grudges, suppressed for centuries, erupted into open conflict. Humanity had stepped back from the front lines, but the consequences of their victory kept pulling them forward. Every week, new requests arrived. Requests for arbitration, requests for technology, requests for soldiers, and sometimes requests for forgiveness. In the command complex orbiting Earth, no longer a war room, but not yet a place of peace, Commander Elias Ward studied a star map that refused to settle into calm colors. Too many regions still flickered amber and red. An officer spoke quietly. "Sir, we're becoming what we swore we wouldn't." Ward didn't look away from the map. "No," he said, "we're being treated like it." That difference mattered. Humanity refused to claim authority. No tribute, no enforced laws, no fleets stationed permanently over foreign worlds. But absence created fear, just as presence once had. Some species begged humans to stay forever. Others demanded they leave immediately. Both sides accused humanity of manipulation. And both sides were wrong. The truth was simpler and heavier. The galaxy had grown, used to being told what to do. Now it had to decide for itself. In a distant sector once known as Council Core Prime, a crisis erupted that tested everything humanity believed it stood for. 3 former tributary species, long forced into artificial peace, descended into total war when Council oversight vanished. Planetary bombardments began. Civilian casualties skyrocketed. Human observers transmitted the footage to Earth. Cities burning, oceans boiling, children running beneath falling stars. The room went silent. An aide asked the question no one wanted to answer. If we don't intervene, millions die. If we do, we choose sides. Ward closed his eyes. This was the trap of power. The same trap the council had fallen into, deciding who lived, who ruled, who mattered. Humanity had sworn never to become that judge. But doing nothing was also a choice. After hours of debate, Ward made his decision. "We don't choose sides," he said. "We choose life." Human fleets deployed, not to fight for any faction, but to enforce a single rule: no attacks on civilians. Planet crackers were disabled. Orbital weapons neutralized. Any force that violated evacuation corridors was stopped. Hard. Human soldiers didn't advance banners. They advanced medics. Some called it hypocrisy. Others called it salvation. The fighting slowed, then stopped. Not because humanity conquered the sector, but because the cost of ignoring human boundaries became too high. It was a dangerous precedent, one that humanity would wrestle with for generations. As these operations continued, something unexpected emerged within human society itself. Veterans of the Galactic War, men and women who had stared into the abyss of extinction, began to change how humanity saw itself. They no longer spoke of Earth alone. They spoke of responsibility, of shared fate, of never again allowing one power to decide the worth of entire species. Some called them idealists. Others called them naive. But their influence spread. Human universities opened their doors to alien students. Joint research stations sprang up along former council borders. Languages blended, cultures clashed, and learned. Not always peacefully. On Earth, backlash grew. "We didn't ask to carry the galaxy," protesters shouted. "Let them solve their own problems." They weren't wrong. Human leaders faced elections shaped by a question no generation before them had faced. What does humanity owe the stars? Ward watched these debates with a heavy heart. He had once thought war was the hardest burden a leader could carry. He had been wrong. Peace demanded more. One evening, deep in former council space, a small human diplomatic vessel was destroyed. No warning. No survivors. The attackers broadcast a message immediately afterward. A symbol burned across subspace. Not the council's. Something older. Intelligence scrambled to identify it. Archives were searched. Alien historians were consulted. The answer chilled everyone who heard it. The council had not been the first. They had been a successor. Long before the Galactic Council, there had been something else. An entity, a civilization, or perhaps a coalition that believed chaos was inevitable unless crushed early. When it collapsed, the council rose to replace it, inheriting not just territory, but ideology. Now, that ideology had found new believers. They called themselves the Continuance. Their message was simple and terrifying. Humanity has broken order. We will restore it. Unlike the council, the Continuance did not rule openly. They did not demand tribute. They infiltrated, manipulated, armed extremists, turned worlds against one another, and blamed freedom itself. The galaxy shuddered. Ward convened an emergency summit. Human leaders, alien representatives, former enemies sitting side by side. "This isn't about territory," Ward said. "This is about belief." They believe choice leads to chaos. They believe fear is mercy. A delegate asked, voice shaking, "And what do you believe, Commander?" Ward paused. "I believe choice is dangerous," he said honestly, "but it's the only thing that makes life worth protecting." The war that followed was not declared. It crept. Humanity did not respond with armadas. They responded with unity, intelligence sharing, joint task forces, local empowerment. Instead of replacing old masters with new ones, they trained worlds to defend themselves. Progress was slow, messy, sometimes heartbreaking, but it worked. The Continuance found fewer places to hide. Their narratives collapsed when worlds compared notes instead of listening in isolation. Their cells were exposed, dismantled, cut off. They lashed out harder. Assassinations, terror strikes, planetary sabotage. And still, the galaxy did not return a tribute. Years later, standing on a balcony overlooking Earth's night side, Ward felt the weight finally begin to lift. Humanity was no longer standing alone at the edge of the stars. They stood among equals. An aide joined him quietly. "Do you think they'll ever stop trying to control the galaxy?" Ward smiled faintly. "No." Then was all this worth it? Ward looked up at the stars, no longer symbols of fear, but of shared uncertainty. "Yes," he said, "because now they have to try." Far across the galaxy, children of a dozen species learned history not as a list of empires, but as a warning. They learned of a time when tribute was law, when fear ruled faster than light. And they learned of the moment it ended, when a young species was told to kneel, and answered, not with silence, not with surrender, but with the courage to change everything. The galaxy had begun to breathe again, or at least it pretended to, but beneath the fragile peace, shadows stirred. Humanity had won the war against the Galactic Council. Their fleets were shattered, their control mechanisms destroyed. Entire systems that had been enslaved for centuries now tasted freedom. Yet freedom had a price that no one could measure. For every world liberated, for every fleet destroyed, a question remained unanswered. What would emerge from the ashes? Deep in the outer reaches of what had been Council territory, sensors detected unusual signals. Faint, irregular, almost organic patterns that did not match any known fleet signatures. They were subtle, so subtle that only the most advanced human deep space arrays could catch them. The first to notice the signals were young officers on a remote reconnaissance station orbiting a gas giant. At first, they dismissed it as interference. Even Ward's best analysts were unsure. "It's probably remnants of old Council tech," one muttered, "or ghost signals from collapsed fleets." But then the anomalies began to move. Slowly, imperceptibly, like a shadow stretching across a room. Transmissions scrambled as if someone or something was watching them from within the data. The warning alarms that had been silent since the Council fell began to blare again. Ward was summoned immediately. By the time he arrived at the command chamber, the projections had changed. A single, tiny point of light was moving through space. Nothing else accompanied it. No fleet, no life signs, no energy signature that could be measured accurately. And yet, every simulation suggested danger. "Sir," an officer said, voice tight with tension, "we can't classify it. It isn't following any known physics. The probes we sent, they disappeared." Ward leaned over the star map, narrowing his eyes. He did not like this feeling. There was a cold edge to it, a creeping sense that the galaxy had not finished testing humanity. "This isn't a fleet," he said finally. "It's something else." The warning was soon validated. Within hours, other stations reported similar anomalies. Blinking points of light, signals appearing and disappearing, and shadows moving across the void like fingers searching for prey. Even long-range telescopes detected distortions in the very fabric of space, a ripple that defied explanation. On Earth, civilians noticed nothing. Markets remained open. Children went to school. People continued to live in the comforting illusion that the war had ended. But Ward knew better. He had felt the first brush of it in his gut, a premonition sharper than any sensor honed over decades of command. He convened a council of humanity's top strategists, diplomats, and fleet commanders. For hours, they debated. Was this a remnant of the council? A new faction rising from the chaos? Or something older than any history recorded by any species in the galaxy? "We don't know what we're facing," Ward said, voice low. "But if we wait, it will decide for us." The decision was unanimous. Humanity would investigate, but cautiously. Small, fast, stealth-capable vessels were dispatched, each carrying the best technology and the most experienced crews. They were tasked with observation first, engagement only if necessary. And then, one by one, the reports started to come back. Ships vanished without a trace. Communications were scrambled mid-transmission. Crews described fleeting images on sensors, dark shapes moving in impossible patterns, fleets bending around points of light that did not exist, shadows that seemed alive. One pilot, a veteran of the Council War, radioed in a single phrase before the feed cut off. "They are watching." The words hung in every commander's mind like a blade. Ward ordered a full review. Data streams from every deep space sensor were analyzed. Patterns emerged. These anomalies were not random. They were strategic. They were patient. They were calculating. The realization sent a chill through the human command network. Whatever they were, they had survived centuries of council rule and had not acted until now. Their emergence now, precisely as humanity stabilized the liberated sectors, suggested intelligence beyond comprehension. Then came the first strike. Not on Earth, not on any major human installation. Instead, it hit a former tributary world, a planet still recovering from years of oppression under the Council. Entire orbital defense grids were disabled in seconds. Fleets stationed nearby reported systems shutting down simultaneously. Ships fell out of the sky, their crews screaming silently into the void. Communications were cut. Panic erupted among the planet's population. Ward watched the feed with grim determination. "This is no council attack," he said. "This is something else, something older." The pattern became undeniable. The shadows were not attacking for conquest. They were testing, prodding, evaluating. Systems were crippled just enough to provoke a response, to see how humanity and the liberated worlds would react. Humanity responded. A fleet of the fastest human destroyers jumped to the threatened sector. Stealth modules engaged, and weapons were primed. Yet when they arrived, the target appeared intact. No damage, no signs of conflict, nothing but a faint disturbance in subspace. Then, from the shadows, a single ship emerged. Not massive, not armed in any conventional sense. Yet it moved with confidence that defied physics. It slipped through human formations as if they were not there. Sensors could barely lock onto it. It paused, hovering in the void, just beyond scanning range. And then it fired. The energy did not strike ships. It did not explode. It warped space itself, creating a distortion that collapsed nearby sensors and knocked communication satellites offline. Human crews reported hallucinations. Some swore the stars themselves were moving. Instruments recorded fluctuations that defied every known law of physics. Humanity had faced alien fleets, council dreadnoughts, and weapons capable of sterilizing planets. This was different. This was a predator that didn't fight for territory, didn't fight for conquest. It fought to unsettle, to test, to intimidate. Ward's face was pale. "They're teaching us fear," he said. "Not destruction. Fear." Weeks passed. Human crews grew restless, exhausted, terrified. Every encounter with the Shadow Fleet left them shaken, even those who had survived unscathed. It was a psychological war as much as a physical one. The Shadow Fleet never repeated the same tactic. One day, they would disable orbital weapons. The next, warp fields would fail in transit lanes, stranding fleets for hours in the cold void. Communications would carry voices not belonging to anyone known, echoes in dead languages, voices that seemed alive and mocking. Humanity realized a terrifying truth. This force could not be fought conventionally. Destroying one vessel would not end the threat. It could not be predicted, trapped, or contained. And yet, Ward refused to retreat. If humanity learned one thing from their war with the Council, it was that survival required audacity. They would adapt, they would learn, they would face this new terror. Not because they wanted to, but because there was no alternative. A global broadcast was issued. Ward addressed humanity directly. His face appeared on every screen across Earth and the colonies. "This is unlike anything we've ever faced," he said. "But we are humanity. We have faced extinction before. We have faced empires that claim to be gods. And we have survived. We will survive again. Not because we are invincible, but because we do not surrender." Then came the first coordinated engagement. Multiple fleets converged near a dense asteroid belt where shadow anomalies had been spotted. Human ships moved with extreme caution, using stealth and decoys, ready for traps. Sensors were unreliable. Weapons had to be aimed with instinct as much as data. The anomaly emerged. Not a fleet, not a ship, but a swirling mass of void, energy shaped into terrifying forms. It moved faster than human ships could track. It warped space to evade attacks. It seemed to anticipate every move. The first volleys of human fire hit, but the shots passed through it, dissipating harmlessly. Gravity-based projectiles bent around it. Electronic warfare tactics were useless. For hours, fleets tried to engage. No damage, no victory, only chaos. And then, as abruptly as it appeared, the anomaly vanished. Humanity was left shaken, not defeated, but reminded, sharply, that the universe was larger and stranger than any war they had ever fought. Ward gathered his commanders. "We survived the Council," he said. "We toppled an empire. We liberated worlds. But this is a new chapter. And chapters like this are not written with fear. They are written with courage." The galaxy held its breath. Humanity had proven that it could face impossible odds and still endure. But for the first time, the stars themselves seemed to question whether any species could truly claim mastery over them. In the shadows beyond known space, the predator waited, patient and silent. It had no name. It bore no allegiance. It tested, it watched, and it calculated. Humanity did not know whether it was a guardian or a harbinger, an observer or an executioner. But one thing was certain: the war had changed. The real fight, the one that would define the species' place in the galaxy, was only beginning. And for every human watching the stars that night, one thought burned hotter than fear. The galaxy had demanded tribute once. Humanity refused. And now, whatever comes, humanity would answer. The silence returned. But it was no longer peaceful. It was suspenseful. It was dangerous. And it was only the beginning. The galaxy had learned to breathe again, but that breath was shallow, nervous. Humanity had survived the fall of the Galactic Council. They had shattered an empire, liberated worlds, and forced the stars to acknowledge that defiance was possible. Yet victory had not brought peace. Shadows lingered at the edges of every star system, and the universe itself seemed to watch, silent and patient. Reports of anomalies poured in from the far reaches of former Council space. Fleets reported points of light moving in impossible patterns, entire sectors where physics seemed to bend and warp. Communications became unreliable. Transmissions carried distorted voices, sometimes familiar, sometimes alien. Ships vanished without a trace. The galaxy that had been broken by the Council now quivered under something even older, even stranger. Commander Elias Ward stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the stars silent. He had faced death, fleets larger than entire nations, weapons capable of destroying planets. But this was different. This was not a war fought with fire or steel. This was a test of humanity itself. Sensors picked up a new anomaly approaching the inner colonies, smaller than a fleet, but faster than any human ship, moving unpredictably, almost sentient. For hours, human forces tried to track it, to understand it, but every attempt failed. Systems flickered, instruments warped. Crews felt as if the universe itself was shifting around them. And then, just as suddenly, the anomaly disappeared. Humanity was shaken, but not broken. Years of surviving the Council War had taught them one unshakable truth. Adversity demanded courage. Ward called a full summit. Diplomats, fleet commanders, and surviving alien allies gathered in orbit around Earth. "This is unlike anything we've faced," Ward said, voice calm, yet resolute. "It is not a fleet. It is not an army. It is something older, patient, intelligent. And it is testing us." A young officer asked quietly, "Do we fight it?" Ward looked out at the stars, thinking of every battle humanity had ever endured. "We endure. We protect. We survive. And we answer when the galaxy demands it." Humanity would not kneel. Even as the shadows of the unknown waited beyond, humanity's fleets stood ready, not to conquer, not to dominate, but to defend. Every colony, every station, every liberated world was armed, prepared, and united by the one thing no enemy could take: their refusal to bow. And then Ward addressed the galaxy. His broadcast went to every world, human and alien alike. "We are humanity. We do not claim the right to rule. We do not demand tribute. We do not seek conquest. But we will fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves. And we will never surrender to fear, to intimidation, or to tyranny. The galaxy will not dictate our fate. Humanity will." The stars were silent for a moment, as if listening. And in that silence, a truth settled. Humanity had faced the impossible, toppled empires, and survived. And while the universe remained dangerous, uncertain, and full of shadows, the spark of defiance burned brighter than any fear. Whatever threats waited in the darkness, humanity was ready. The galaxy had once demanded tribute. Humanity had answered. With war, with courage, with unyielding resolve. And the universe had never been the same. The future was uncertain, dangerous, and alive, but it belonged to humanity. And humanity would never bow again.